Joe is also a civil society leader, and he has connected many social issues towards bringing transformational changes to lead the communities in a dignified manner. He has got many awards like the World Habitat Award, Skoll Award for Social Entrepreneurship, Ashoka Changemakers Award, and he has been driving force for many, particularly in social sector organizations, not only in WAS theme, but also in other thematic areas. In many ways, Mr. Joe Mediate is the Bhisma Pitamaha of the WAS sector when it comes to civil society organizations intervention.
Sure.
We also have Mr. Andres Oso Gonzalez. He is our colleague from WaterAid. Currently, he is the senior policy analyst, sanitation policy and campaign, and work for WaterAid UK, and contribute significantly in WaterAid Federation's work in 36 countries. He is a cross-disciplinary expert, combining an engineering background and having conducted research in different countries in South America, Africa, and South Asia. So he has a PhD degree, and his fieldwork for his PhD degree was in India. And he analyzed Indian sanitation policies and the sustainability of community-led total sanitation program. Welcome you, Andres, to this webinar.
Thank you.
Urmila Devi and Sangeeta Katsov are community leaders from Gumla block, and they have triggered women's action through strengthening SHG institution, amplifying voices on WAS and women rights in the community, and in many ways enabled the rural women to maintain a dignified life. I welcome all of you again. Also, I welcome all the participants who have joined through in this webinar. We will start with getting opinions and the remarks from the participants. Towards the end, we will also take up questions from the audience. So, Mr. Joe Mediate, if you are online, I'm not very sure because I am not able to see, but I'm imagining that you are already in. So I would like to start with you. My first question to you, Mr. Joe Mediate, would be, as sanitation sector people, we would like to know the motivation and the actions you have taken, particularly in the eastern states of Odisha and Jharkhand for so many decades. A bit of your life journey, and also I would like to know from you, based on your long years of association in this sector, what do you feel about impact of sanitation services on groundwater quality, which is the global theme for this year's World Toilet Day?
Mr. Joe has just admitted. If you can repeat the question, I think he can listen to you.
Okay. Mr. Joe Mediate, I am hoping that you are in again. I have just started the webinar, and the first question was to you, and we wanted to listen from you, your vision and motivation and action in last about 4 decades, wherein you worked in very challenging geographical areas in India to carry forward the mandate of WAS with the communities, and also your view on the impact of sanitation services on groundwater based on your long years of association. I think we are still having some technical issues here. So we will try to sort it out. In the meantime, I go to our colleague Andres. And Andres, from you, we would like to know, based on your experiences, in South America, Africa, and South Asia, and given the fact that your major work in sanitation has been in India, what is, in your opinion, are the major issues pertaining to impact of sanitation services on groundwater?
Yes.
I don't know if Joe has now.
We are careful about.
Okay.
Unless we are careful about how we situate the leach pits, the leach pits can be a danger to drinking water, especially from shallow wells. They say that the leach pit should be at least 50 feet away from any source of drinking water that people will tap. I feel if it's about 30 to 35 meters, or if possible, 50 meters from the nearest leach pit that we situate these wells, it would be enough. We have done extensive studies to see the contamination of water from leach pits, and we found that beyond 30 meters, it really has no effect. Over. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Please carry on, Mr. Mathiat.
Yeah, actually, a comprehensive sanitation program is to see that the drinking water is safe. Yeah. But
World
we are not careful.
ये जो मीडिया था.
Yeah. But if we are not careful, the very toilets that we construct and the leach pits with that, or even septic tanks, are going to contaminate the drinking water, especially if they are placed, say, in about 20, less than 20 meters from the sources that we access um, as, drinking water. This especially regard to shallow wells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joe Diet.
Yeah,
Extremely
you can
useful.
probably just go. It's too long and too cumbersome a name, Joe Madiath, and Madiath is not a very common name. So Joe, not the, there are not too many Joes in sanitation, so Joe is sufficient.
Thank you so much, Joe. And many ways, I mean, you have been pioneer and inspiration for many of us to work in this sector. I have very long association with you. My first comprehensive, I would say, involvement in water sector has been because of you and with you. Thank you so much. Now I go to my colleague Andres from WaterAid UK. And Andres, I would like to know from your extensive experiences across different continents, what are the major issues when it comes to groundwater quality associated with different types of sanitation services we provide in the rural areas.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for having me. I'm really pleased to join this webinar. I think one key aspect for me when we discuss the groundwater contamination linked to sanitation, particularly when we talk about rural areas, I think there is sometimes a simplistic understanding of what rural areas are as places that are very sparsely populated and where groundwater may be quite deep. And based on that, some of the choices that are made in terms of sanitation technologies are not very safe because there is a very clear risk of groundwater contamination when we choose the wrong designs for our toilets, or where those toilets, maybe the design is not a problem, but the functioning is a problem. And I think there are 4 aspects that are really important when considering the groundwater contamination. So where water table is high, there's a high risk of contamination because a lot of the technologies are leaching, leach type technologies. So where water table is high, that's a key factor. Second key factor is where there are high flows of untreated wastewater. So maybe the water table is not very high, but if you have a lot of toilets in a small area, or if you have, for example, a lot of gray water, that means you have a big flow of wastewater that can travel farther into the ground without filtering. So the soil has this filtering effect But if you have too much water or too little distance as the wastewater travels into the ground, then it cannot treat effectively all the wastewater and it may reach the groundwater. So number one, high water table. Number two, high flows of untreated wastewater. And number three is the particular soil. So you may not have the conditions that I have mentioned above, but the soil may have may be of a particular nature that allows the water to travel longer distance. So there may be crevices or gaps or be a soil that allows that wastewater to travel farther deep into the groundwater. So those are three, and then the fourth aspect I think is even when those conditions seem okay, there may be like floods or very intense rainy season where the pits are overflowing. So even though the waste, the fecal waste was safely contained, it then overflows and can contaminate both surface and groundwater. So I think those are four elements that I think we need to understand better, and also, but also actually check with sampling and testing whether the groundwater in the different season is contaminating. And I think that's evidence that is generally lacking in rural areas for most countries. So I think it's important to map those variables, to do this sample testing, also to check if people are drinking that water. You may have shallow water contamination, but then people are using deep tube wells to drink. So yeah, there may be contamination, but it's not affecting people's health. So I think those are some of the variables and aspects that we need to understand for two reasons. One is to choose the correct design. So we may be in places where, for instance, a twin pit, which is generally a very good option, it may not be a good option because of high water table and people drinking from shallow wells, or maybe it is very dense, so you cannot have the distance that is required. So understanding this will help us choose the correct design. And then it also can help us prioritize where we need to intervene. So if we know there's an area that is particularly vulnerable because of floods or because of the geological aspects, then we can prioritize that area for retrofitting. So yeah, I think that's overall what I see from different countries, and I think some of these aspects are particularly relevant for the Indian context, where I think a lot of the what we call rural areas, is actually quite dense. So you will have this, a lot of flow of wastewater. It will also be very difficult in many villages to live like this 10 or 30 meters, as Joe was suggesting, between the toilets and the taps. And then also with the Jal Jeevan Mission, there will be more and more water available for households. So you have grey water in addition to black water, so more flows of untreated wastewater that risk contamination. So I think this is a very, very topical issue in the current context in India, and I think it's really important to have these conversations and some of the efforts to retrofit the twin pits and but need to look broader than that, to include a more granular understanding of the risks of groundwater contamination. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andres, for your insightful analysis. And as a nation in India, when we are having more and more number of toilets being constructed, and the usage of toilet is increasing, I'm sure that some of the issues you are highlighting are extremely important to consider at this juncture. So thanks a lot. We'll come back again to you. And before that, I welcome to this webinar two prominent community leaders, Urmila Devi, Sangeeta Kashyap ji, दोनों को सादर नमस्कार, जोहार।
नमस्कार, जोहार।
दीदी, आप लोग से मैं ये जानना चाहूंगा कि SBM और जल जीवन मिशन में आपका कम्युनिटी की तरफ से बहुत अच्छा भागीदारी निभाए हैं और हमको मालूम है कि आपने कम्युनिटी लेवल में अवेयरनेस बिल्डिंग में बहुत बड़ा काम किया है। सैनिटेशन और पानी के ऊपर आपने कम्युनिटीज को मोबिलाइज किए हैं। तो आपसे दो चीज जानना चाहूँगा। एक है, ये जो आपने काम किए हैं गुमला जिला में, उसमें कितना बड़े पैमाने में अभी तक आपने काम कर पाए हैं एवं आपका चैलेंजेस क्या रहा है। और उसका साथ साथ ये भी मैं जानना चाहूँगा, जब अभी जैसा टॉयलेट्स ज़्यादा हो गए हैं, पानी का सप्लाई टॉयलेट्स में आने लगे हैं, उसका वजह से कम्युनिटी लेवल में आप जब लोगों से डेली बेसिस पे आप बात करते हो, वहाँ पे लोग जो जमीन के नीचे जो पानी है उसका क्वालिटी के बारे में, पानी का गुणवत्ता के बारे में आप लोग का अनुभव क्या है, आपका एवं आपका वहाँ का जो कम्युनिटीज है। और ये हमें लगा कि आप लोग में से नहीं, आप लोग से कोई बेहतर तरीका से नहीं बता सकते, इसलिए आपको अनुरोध रहेगा दो चीज बताने के लिए। आपका ओवरऑल अनुभव वाटर सप्लाई और सैनिटेशन और ड्रिंकिंग वाटर में काम करने का, एवं उसका साथ साथ जो आपका नजरिया में ग्राउंड वाटर के ऊपर ये सैनिटेशन ज़्यादा होने की वजह से कोई प्रभाव आया कि नहीं आया, ये दो चीज़ आपसे जानना चाहूँगा। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
पहले जब हम लोग के पास में शौचालय नहीं था, उस टाइम में हम लोग को जो पानी मिलता था वो थोड़ा सा दूषित मिलता था। और अभी जो हम लोग उसको यूज कर रहे हैं शौचालय, और मतलब शौच करने के लिए बाहर नहीं जा रहे हैं, उस टाइम में अभी हम लोग को पानी थोड़ा सा शुद्ध मिल पा रहा है, स्वच्छ मिल पा रहा है। क्योंकि पहले हम लोग गांव के लोग जब बाहर में शौचालय करने जाते थे, शौच करके आते थे, तो कहीं ना कहीं पानी के माध्यम से ही बहकर वो दूषित हो जाता था, जमा हुआ पानी। और हम लोग को पीने के लिए भी स्वच्छ पानी नहीं मिल पाता था, और कोई भी काम करने के लिए स्वच्छ पानी नहीं मिलता था। लेकिन अभी हम लोग का जो वास प्रोजेक्ट जो चला, उसमें से हम लोग प्रेरित होकर जो बनाए, अपना लोन के माध्यम से ही बनाए, उसमें से हम लोग को बहुत फायदा हुआ है उससे। अभी जैसे कि पहले हम लोग को पता नहीं था और हम लोग पास जमा पूंजी भी नहीं था कि हम लोग उसको रिपेयर करके अपना यूज के लिए ला सके, यूज करने के लिए ला सके। लेकिन जब हम लोग को संस्था के माध्यम से ही बताया गया और कैसे करके बनाना होगा उसको बताया गया, जैसे कि हम लोग का जो गांव में महिला समूह बैठता है SHG, उसमें दीदी लोग जो बचत करते हैं पैसा, उसी को लेके लोन के रूप में हम लोग कम लेके उसको शौचालय को हम लोग मरम्मत करवाए और उसमें अभी यूज कर रहे हैं। इसके बाद में जैसे कि पानी, फिल्टर वाला पानी, जो पहले हम लोग के पास फिल्टर नहीं था और हम लोग के पास फिल्टर खरीदने के लिए पैसा भी नहीं था। हम लोग डायरेक्ट कुआं से या चापाकल से पानी निकाल के डायरेक्ट पी जाते थे, या गर्म करते थे या नहीं करते थे। लेकिन जब हम लोग को संस्था के माध्यम से बताया गया जाके कि हम लोग को फिल्टर करके पीना चाहिए, उससे हम लोग को बीमारी नहीं होगा और मतलब पानी का जो गुणवत्ता होना चाहिए उसको जैसे साफ सुथरा होना चाहिए, उसको हम लोग को पीने से बीमारी नहीं होगा, इस सब के बारे में हम लोग को बताया गया। तो हम लोग फिल्टर का पानी यूज कर रहे हैं। तो अभी हम लोग को पहले से अच्छा महसूस हो रहा है। उसमें हम लोग को अभी बीमारी सब भी बहुत जल्दी पकड़ने का ऐसा आशंका नहीं लग रहा है। और है कि हम लोग और गांव के क्षेत्र में तो नहाने के लिए भी मतलब बाथरूम नहीं होता है, दिक्कत होता था।
जैसे कि हम लोग कुआं था, नदी, पोखर, वहाँ खुले में जाके नहाते थे। जैसे कि लड़की बच्ची, लड़का बच्चा या माता बहने, तो हम लोग को खुला में अच्छा नहीं लगता था नहाने में। अच्छा से हम लोग नहीं नहा पाते थे, जैसे तैसे नहाते थे। और कहीं कुछ भी काम में या कुछ भी जाने में हम लोग को बहुत समय लगता था, घर से दूर जाना पड़ता था और वहाँ से नहा के आके फिर जाते थे। तो हम लोग वही SHG का ग्रुप बनाए, वहाँ प्रधान तरफ से दीदी सब आती थी और वो लोग बताती थी कि आप लोग के गांव में नहाने धोने के लिए दिक्कत है, तो जैसे कि आप लोग बाथरूम बना लीजिए अपना घर के आंगन में, और जहाँ से भी पानी बाल्टी सब में ले आइए और तुरंत में नहा धोआ के अच्छा से जहाँ जहाँ भी जाना है, चाहे बाल बच्चा को पढ़ाई लिखाई में जाना है, तो अच्छा से सब कोई नहा धोआ के साफ सुथरा से रहिए कह के बोली। उस समय हम लोग वही महिला मंडल से पैसा लिए और पैसा से अपना घर घर में बाथरूम बनाए। और अभी हम लोग का गांव घर बहुत सुंदर साफ सुथरा है और घर में लाके नहाते धोआते हैं। सभी बेटा बेटी अपना इज्जत से रखते हैं, जैसे कि अपना बाथरूम में नहाते हैं, खुला में नहीं नहाते हैं। खुला में नहाने में बहुत सारा परेशानी होता था, इसीलिए तुरंत में नहा के कुछ भी काम धंधा करते हैं। SHG का भी बैठक अच्छा से करते हैं हम लोग।
और पहले हम लोग को मतलब पता नहीं था कि पानी तो हम लोग के पास होता था, लेकिन वही दूषित पानी, साफ सुथरा नहीं मिलता था। जैसे कि अगर कहीं पे सोलर प्लेट का ही अगर कहीं पे हम लोग का जल मीनार बना हुआ है, तो जल मीनार का पानी बेकार का बह जाता था। और उसके लिए हम लोग को मतलब स्टोर करने के लिए, मतलब उसको कहीं पे सुरक्षित जमा करके रखने के लिए हम लोग के पास साधन नहीं था, और हम लोग को कोई आइडिया भी नहीं था कि हम लोग उसको कैसे कर पाएंगे। तो उसके लिए भी हम लोग को दीदी की ओर से ही जाके बताए कि आप लोग घर घर में मतलब पाइपलाइन के माध्यम से भी आप लोग पानी को घर तक पहुंचा सकते हैं, जिससे कि आप लोग को पानी लाने जाने का जो टाइम लगता है, वो उस टाइम में आप लोग कुछ और अलग काम कर सकते हैं। जैसे कि जैसे कि अगर वो पानी हम लोग का रखने का सामान नहीं होता था, उसको भी हम लोग ले लिए। लेकिन अगर शौचालय का ही बात करेंगे, तो अगर कहीं पे पीने का पानी जहाँ पर है, कुआं है या चापानल है, तो वहां पर मतलब बहुत सामने भी बनाने से पानी दूषित हो जाता था। लेकिन जब हम लोग को दीदी लोग गई और बताई कि वो शौचालय 10 फीट की दूरी में होना चाहिए,
जैसे कि कुआं सब है उसके 10 फीट की दूरी में बनाना चाहिए।
उसके बाद में उसका जो गड्ढा होगा उसको 4 फीट का बनाना चाहिए। फिर दोनों गड्ढा की दूरी भी 1 मीटर भी होना चाहिए। ऐसे इस टाइप से बताया गया, तो हम लोग वैसे किए। उसके बाद में हम लोग को मतलब लगा कि पानी का जो उसका जो क्वालिटी है वो सुधार हो पाया है, मतलब पीने में भी कुछ अलग स्वाद उसके बाद में आना शुरू हुआ। ये सब हम लोग को फायदा हुआ दीदी लोग के बताने से।
ओके, ठीक है, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आपको दोबारा हम आपका पास आएंगे। बहुत अच्छा लगा आपका अनुभव सुन के। नाउ आई टर्न टू जो। जो, you have been telling about the problems, and you also had some advice on how it can be overcome when it comes to contamination of groundwater because of the sanitation work and sanitation services. So I would like to know, based on your many years of experience, what is the extent of this problem? Is it a large scale problem in India, particularly in rural areas? And if it is so, what are the corrective measures one should consider? I think you have to unmute yourself. Purno, can you help in unmuting? So we can't hear you because you are muted. Yeah, now we can hear.
Okay. Yeah, because of the proximity of soak pits to shallow water wells for drinking water, the water that you drink may be polluted. But there is also, if you ensure that the soak pits are say 50 meters away from the well, but even then there's a problem. Water is brought. If it is not piped water, then very often it is stored in pots, and then children come, they want some water, they dip a glass and their hand into the stored water. The person cooking also may do the same thing. And this way, water also gets polluted. So that has to be, there has to be sufficient education and even methodology to see that this water is not contaminated. When I say methodology, I mean, well, the water, drinking water, if it is at all collected, it is kept in pots, and near the pots are kept covered. And when water is extracted, you extract it, or you take the water from, not extract, you take the water from these pots through by means of a say ladle, but with long handle, so that the hand will not touch the water at all. So this is, I think this is a habit which is quite well practiced in Gujarat. But in eastern India, in Orissa and other parts, Bihar, it is not that much practiced. And as such, we need to educate the people, understand, and more than say, no, use this. It is important that we tell them the reason. The instruction should be through a very well reasoned out mechanism. So this is something which has to be done. If it is piped water, is it? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we
No.
can hear
Yes,
you.
we can.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes.
Okay. But if it is, in our case, what we overcame this by having piped water through 3 taps. A tap in the toilet, a tap in the bathing room. We also have a bathing room, and a tap in the kitchen. So drinking water is not stored in pots. You take it directly from the water tap. This, to a great extent, answers the problem of what pollution of water through touching and unclean vessels or unclean instruments taking water from pots. But if that is not done, then we have to store it properly and take out water properly. Yeah. Yes, Vishwanath.
Yes, thank you very much for your sharing this advice. And I'm sure that all of us who are practitioners, we will take it these advices with all seriousness. Now, Andres, you have worked in India extensively, and to the extent that your PhD fieldwork was in India, rural areas. So based on your observations, are there any issues pertaining to, at the one hand, maintaining quality of the sanitation, and on the other hand, sustainability of it, and then not affecting the groundwater in a adverse manner?
Thank you. Yeah, I think if I reflect on my experience in India, I think the most relevant aspect was my involvement in WaterAid India study in 2017, which was a rapid assessment of the toilet technologies that were being built under Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin back then. And that survey covered like 1,000 households and was looking both at toilets that were already constructed and that were under construction. And basically, we saw there that around like the twin pit technology was only around 57% of the substructure that was being built, and then there were like 20-something single leach pits and 20-something septic tanks, which are not properly designed septic tanks anyway. They were more like holding tanks, but they don't have they don't follow the design. So I think based on that, what that study concluded was that of the toilets that were surveyed in that study, more or less a third were safe designs and safe options. Then there were a third that we thought there was like an immediate risk of groundwater contamination, maybe because they were leach pits or soak pits in high water table, for instance, or for similar reasons. And then there was another third of the toilets that maybe in the short term it was okay. For instance, if there was like a single leach pit, but in the long term it would be problematic because once it's full, there is no easy solution. So there would be need for a big investment in terms of making sure that toilet remains safe in the long term. So I think a lot of that is that's 5 years ago. So a lot of those single leach pits and septic tanks will have filled up by now. So this retrofitting is really an urgent business, I would say, because yeah, if these figures are true, that means a lot of the toilets built during Swachh Bharat mission need upgrading or retrofitting. So I think that's a big part of or a big concern that I have. So I think that's one element. So what do we do with those toilets that were built during Swachh Bharat mission? And the other element is also trying to address a complicated issue, which is the emptying of the toilet. So even if we use the twin pit technology, it needs emptying, and we don't know how well the twin pit technology is working. For instance, very often the pits are too close to each other, or they may have like design issues. So in theory, when they are emptied, it's just very safe compost. But is that the reality? I don't think we have a lot of evidence that tells us what is happening after 3-5 years. How are the twin pits being emptied? Is it safe? And I think, yeah, even more concerning when it comes to the septic tanks that were in reality holding tanks, when they need emptying, then what happens? And I think we have there serious concerns in terms of the conditions of and the stigma faced for those that are emptying those pits and septic tanks, but also quite well documented practices like people opening these tanks and letting the rains flush away the content with very high risks in terms of contamination. So I think, yeah, those are some of the concerns, and it's really inspiring to see that there are some efforts to address these sustainability aspects in the phase 2 Swachh Bharat mission. But I think what's really important is to make sure that you have like a reliable monitoring system that tracks that the actual situation on the ground and is dynamic. So it doesn't assume that once you have ticked the box, that's working into the long term, but it allows to regularly track how things are going. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andres. Now we are very fortunate that we have 2 more community leaders joining us, and they are federation members from Torpa, which is again part of Jharkhand, and these federations are promoted and nurtured by one organization called Professional Assistance for Development Action, Pradhan. So welcome, namaskar, Swama Devi ji और सत्यभामा देवी जी, जोहार।
जोहार। मेरा नाम है श्यामा देवी, गांव सुंदारी, पंचायत सुंदारी और प्रखंड तोरपा।
और मेरा नाम है सत्यभामा देवी, गांव अंगरबारी, पंचायत ओकड़ा और प्रखंड तोरपा।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका समय निकालने के लिए। तो आपसे जो हम जानना चाहेंगे, ये हमारा जो साहब और एंड्रेस साहब ने अभी आ सकती है, जैसे पानी लीकेज होके आपका जो पानी हम लोग पीते हैं उसी का साथ ये मिक्स हो जाता है और जाने का संभावना है, जो आगे जाके हमारा हेल्थ के लिए अच्छा नहीं होगा। तो आप लोग तो अभी फेडरेशन का माध्यम से सैनिटेशन और पानी के ऊपर काफी साल से काम कर रहे हैं। तो आपका नजरिया में, आपका अनुभव का आधार पे, ये जो टॉयलेट का क्वालिटी है, एक तो है टॉयलेट का क्वालिटी खराब होने की वजह से पानी अंदर जाके जो ड्रिंकिंग वाटर पीने का पानी के साथ मिक्स होने का संभावना, इसके बारे में। और दूसरा जो आपसे जानना चाहूंगा वो है, कई जगह पे अभी ऐसा हो गया होगा 5-6 साल टॉयलेट बन गए होंगे, लेकिन ये मल को वहां से निकाल के दूसरा जगह में उसको ट्रीटमेंट के लिए लेके जाने का एक अभी अगर प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, आगे जाके ये प्रॉब्लम होने वाली है। तो ये दोनों संबंध में, ये दो चीज का संबंध में आप क्या राय रखते हैं?
पानी हम लोग को सर नहीं समझे, पानी का स्वच्छता के बारे में पूछ रहे हैं?
हाँ हाँ, पानी का स्वच्छता मतलब
हम
पीने
लोग
का पानी का स्वच्छता, उसका साथ जो टॉयलेट का पानी, टॉयलेट से जो पानी निकलने संभावना है, ये दोनों का आपस में संबंध है। तो इस प्रकार की दिक्कतें आपको वहां पे आपको महसूस होता क्या?
सोख्ता गड्ढा बनाना है, इसके लिए बना है हम लोग का गांव में, सब समूह का दीदी लोग बनवाए हैं अपना अपना घर में। और कुआं का जल पीते हैं, चापाकल का पीते हैं, तो उसके लिए हम लोग फिल्टर खरीदे हैं और सब फिल्टर यूज करते हैं दीदी लोग। तो इस फिल्टर जब से यूज कर रहे हैं तब से दीदी लोग का में बीमारी बहुत कम हो गया है और सब अच्छा से अभी जी रहे हैं, काम धाम भी कर रहे हैं। नहीं तो अक्सर दीदी लोग बरसात के दिन में बहुत ज़्यादा बीमार होते थे, जो कि अब बहुत कम हो गया है बीमारी। स्वस्थ है सभी कोई स्वस्थ है, बच्चे बूढ़े और दीदी लोग सभी कोई फिल्टर का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं। साफ नहीं, आवाज नहीं आ रही थी।
नहीं, आपका आवाज आ रही है, सुनाई दे रही है।
पहले तो गंदा पानी पीते थे हम लोग, पीने वाला। अभी फिल्टर लेके अभी सभी कोई हम लोग स्वस्थ हैं और घर में भी सभी कोई फिल्टर का पानी यूज करते हैं।
और शौचालय के बारे में बोलना चाहेंगे। स्वच्छ भारत मिशन के तहत हम लोग को शौचालय बना था, लेकिन टूटा फूटा था, अच्छा से पूरा बन नहीं पाया था। तो फिर हम लोग का ग्रुप में SAG में तरफ से दादा और दीदी लोग आए, फिर उन लोगों ने हमारे शौचालय को देखा, फिर वे बोले कि महिला मंडल के थ्रू से आप लोग को कर्ज के रूप में पैसा दिया जाएगा, जिससे कि आप लोग इसका मरम्मत करा सकें। और वैसा ही हम लोग ने किया। मैंने अपने ग्रुप से 14,000 पैसा लिया और उसको दरवाज़ा अच्छा से नहीं बन पाया था, दरवाज़ा लगवाया, उसको प्लास्टर करवाया और हम लोग बहुत अच्छा से अब उसका इस्तेमाल कर पा रहे हैं। नहीं तो जिस तरह से बना था फिर भी इस्तेमाल करने के लिए वो लायक में नहीं था, बाहर जाने में बहुत दिक्कत होता था। और अब शौचालय अच्छा से बन पाया है और हम लोग इस्तेमाल अच्छा से कर पा रहे हैं।
जो पानी निकलता है हम लोग अच्छे से शौचालय बनाए हैं। अपना डर जो यह वह लिए जल जीवन ही मिशन, हर घर में नल योजना होना जरूरी है।
और हमारे तोरपा प्रखंड में ये शुरू भी हो चुका है, घर घर जल घर घर नल वाला योजना, और
बन रहा है
और इससे हम सबों को बहुत सारा फायदा होने वाला है, जिससे कि हम लोग अपना शौचालय भी इस्तेमाल कर पाएंगे और पानी का भी सुविधा सबको हो पाएगा।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। एक चीज जो आप लोग से जानने का, हेलो, आप सुन पा रहे हैं?
सुन रहे हैं सर।
हाँ,
जी
हाँ, तो अभी जो आपका गांव में बहुत सारे टॉयलेट्स बने होंगे
जी,
आपका गांव और आपका गांव का आसपास जहाँ पे आपका फेडरेशन आप लोग सक्रिय रूप से कार्यरत थे। वहाँ पे एक सवाल था कि बहुत सारे
जी।
टॉयलेट बनने के वजह से टॉयलेट से अगर लीक हो गया पानी जमीन के अंदर जाता है, तो जो पानी है जमीन के अंदर जो हम खेत के लिए और पीने के लिए भी इस्तेमाल करते हैं, वो खराब हो जाएगा। तो उस प्रकार का आपका अनुभव है या आप आगे जाके आपको लगता है कि ऐसा हो सकता है?
गड्ढा बनाते हैं, गड्ढा होता है और पीने का पानी दूर से लाते हैं, दूर में है। 10
तो ठीक है,
किलोमीटर दूर से पीने का
10 मीटर दूरी।
तो ठीक है, हम आपके पास वापस आएंगे।
जी।
So we come back to Joe.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Joe. So based on this discussion and also the potential of groundwater getting contaminated as a second generation sanitation issue, how do you perceive this, and thereby at the policy level, what would be your recommendation?
What Andre said has to be done. Wherever the septic tanks and single pit toilets are there, the retrofitting of this in twin leach pit has to be done. And when we do the retrofitting, also we have to take care of quality toilets. Sanitation is not only about defecation. Sanitation is a statement of dignity of the people. So we should not humiliate people by constructing toilets which are substandard, which are not serving the purpose. So I think retrofitting, but retrofitting is, we have done some retrofitting in Puri district. It is not a job that can easily be done, and there are very few people who will do it. And even if they do it, what is it? We are again going back to the old system of a particular caste of people coming forward and emptying this, even if it is by suction pumps. You need to handle it. Then there is another problem. Just outside the soak pit, the whole place will be for next 3 or 4 months will be a place and people end. So we have to dispose of this slurry somewhere far
It's
off
16 hours.
and in a way that is sanitary. But all this to happen and to retro humongous job. And what it has to be done? Can it be done? I don't know. We have done about 1,000 retrofitting of toilets, and we found it extremely difficult. Very few staff volunteered to take this up. This retrofitting which we did in Puri district was not our doing. I mean, we did the retrofitting, but the toilets were built by government and other agencies. And when we asked them why did you do, if they get used to the idea of using a toilet, and when the leach pit will fill up, they will naturally build another one. That is a tall assumption. Very, very seldom these people build another leach pit. Instead, they go back to their habit before the toilet was built of open defecation. So we are back to the square root of 1. It's a pity. It's a lot of money which has gone down the drain or down the leach pit. Yeah, so, but unless this is done, our sanitation program will be tall claims and very little or little accomplished on the ground. Another thing I would like to point out, in our rural families, the women need privacy when they bathe, because at present they are bathing in the open, in a pond, near a well is very seldom, or in a stream or a nala. This because they are quite circumspect as to how much they expose themselves. Women are not able to clean themselves properly, and there starts skin diseases and other gynecological problems. So I think with very little extra effort, or not very little extra effort, a bathing room can also be attached with a separate door to the toilet. So a toilet and a bathing room, a double leach pit toilet and a bathing room can enhance the quality of sanitation, the quality of personal hygiene, etc. in a village. This may be thought of, and WaterAid being the champion and foremost pioneer of sanitation and water, maybe they can take some lead, and small organizations like ours can follow suit. Yes, Vishwanath sir.
Thank
Are
you,
you able
sir.
to hear me?
Yes. I'm humbled by your word of encouragement. At the same time, we must confess the fact that it's people like you or organizations like Gram Vikas who always saw the path for others. Andres, I think Joe has, hinted to an extremely important part of the game, which is, in a sense, looking into the social issues. So, Andres, you talked about, the groundwater quality potentially getting affected because of the facts like water table or high flow of untreated wastewater into it, etc. But having said all these, technical aspects, particularly in rural context and Indian context, this, social science element comes, and in various ways, the social engineering is probably going to be more important part to make unsuccessful rather than the hardcore engineering part of it. So what do you say on that?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point, and I think historically, the first time I looked into sanitation in India was over a decade ago, when there was this total sanitation campaign. So it's like the 2 campaigns before Swachh Bharat mission, and back then it was very clear that the social elements of the campaign were really being neglected. So it was just about construction of toilets and very little on behavior change. I think it's interesting how the Swachh Bharat mission, in a way, has been more of the same, and in a way it has been very different. I think I'm saying it has been more of the same because the main driver of the Swachh Bharat mission was at the local level was that there was a lot of money being pumped into building toilets in every household. So it was a very construction-driven campaign. Government officers had these targets to complete so many toilets that there was very little attention to behavior change, and we were seeing how the very little amount of money that comparatively to toilet construction, but the little amount of money that was available for information and education campaign for IEC was rarely being used. So on the ground, it was very construction driven. At the same time, when looking at the national level, there was a big push in terms of the social aspect of it. So with the Prime Minister talking about it regularly, with the sanitation tax in when you did any shopping, with the ads everywhere, adverts on TV, even a film. So there was a lot of social element, but more at that general level than at community level. So I think that's an interesting dichotomy of Swachh Bharat mission. And my experience was that it was a bit mixed. I think it has brought a change in many contexts, whereby now it's seen that open defecation is. I think the amount of people that see open defecation as an acceptable practice has decreased with Swachh Bharat mission. But at the same time, I think there are still big swathes of the rural population that maybe these social aspects and behavioral aspects have not been properly addressed. And I think that also is something that needs to be considered from a sustainability perspective. So if what you do is like you put a lot of money in for toilet construction, you don't strengthen the behavior change aspects. You also not necessarily strengthen the governance aspects, like having clear regulations and enforcing in terms of, for example, if you build a new house, it needs to come with a toilet with these characteristics, etc. So that leaves an understanding that sanitation is a government-only agenda and government-funded agenda. So that poses a risk in terms of, in the future, will people that build a new house or people that need to repair their toilets, will they do it by themselves? Will they expect the government to step in? And how do you play with those elements? There is a strong case for the government to put the money in, because I think a lot of the problems with retrofitting are the result of not doing things well when the Swachh Bharat mission was happening. But how do you make sure it gradually becomes a people's agenda, and you can then direct the funding for two things. One is those that really need it, so the equity aspects, so people that are really couldn't do it without the support. And the second thing that where public funding is very important is for the more of the public elements or collective elements of sanitation. So we've been discussing issues of treatment, emptying, and disposal of the black waters, grey waters, fecal waste. Again, going back to my point that sometimes we are very simplistic when we talk about rural areas. Yeah, there will be areas where you can have twin pits and then you empty and then you put it in the fields, etc. I think a lot of the rural areas, that what we call rural areas, a lot of the gram panchayats in India, to me, they look like very small towns, but they look more like a town than a village. So you need more urban-like solutions there. So supporting the emptying treatment, I think that's a big area that will become more and more important in the context of India, and where you need that government funding also to come in. So yeah, I've digressed a bit from the social aspect to the political aspect, but I think those are two reflections in terms of the financing and the social behavior aspect, financing and public action, that I think are quite interlinked. Thank you.
No, thank you, Andres. You were perfectly right, and we can't see, so many issues are interlinked to make it, successfully implemented on the ground. So thank you so much for giving this insight. Now we open the forum for the members to ask any question. So you have two options. You can unmute yourself, introduce by just saying the name and the organization and ask the question. Second option is you can type the question and we can read out. So I am assuming that there is no question. So you have option of raising your hand or just unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can type the question in the chat box. Okay, so we have Satyajit Ghosh raising his hand. Satyajit, can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah. My name is Satyajit Ghosh, and I am also a part of the policy and technical team, currently looking after the research. I was just wondering that this Swachh Bharat mission, we have already in a dashboard. If you go to the Swachh Bharat mission, it's saying the 99% coverage on all the toilets, right? And but there is no research apart from the state-based data that has been collected with the UNICEF on water quality, as well as the link with the ODF. So these two variables, there's open defecation, free villages, as are the water quality. So what is the if you want to take it forward as an agenda to fix it, whether this ODF is already putting the water quality or not. Even the Jal Jeevan mission is there. So again, there is a flow of water is increasing, and particularly it's posing a risk to the areas with a high population density, in Bihar as well as the UP. So these are the two states. So if I have to mix two government schemes, Swachh Bharat Mission, Jal Jeevan Mission, pipe water supply in each household, as well as with the water quality, basically the bacteriological contamination. So I just need to know from Andres, as well as the Joe is there, that how we can take a very informed research study, which will going to base the evidence. Yes, there's a lot of things need to be done on open defecation free, or you say the open defecation plus plus, and then means of open defecation phase, next phase, Swachh Bharat mission next phase, and the Jal Jeevan mission. What is the go ahead? Even when the days will come, or the years will come, we will just going to say that we are saturated with the pipe water supply, we are saturated with the toilet. But the case of the microbial contamination, it is definitely, most probably it will going to increase. So how are you going to take a very qualified as well as the informed research studies globally as well as in the national level?
Thanks. I mean, I'm not sure I'm well positioned to provide an answer to that, but I think, yeah, what I think has been useful in the past has been to provide like a contrasting image of what the official monitoring system is providing. So if the system is saying some places are open defecation free, then I think it's a good opportunity to select a sample of those places and go and understand, okay, is this ODF, is this ODF plus, what are the gaps here? Is there groundwater contamination or not? I mean, we shouldn't assume that everywhere there will be water contamination, but there will be some places. So if we have like a big enough sample of villages, we can, in a given state, for instance, we could even start saying, okay, so actually these villages that are bigger than this population, or that they have a high density, or that are close to rivers with high water table, these are the places that are more concerning for groundwater contamination. So I think it can help in two ways. One is show what the reality is, but also show where is the greater priority in terms of the next steps. Because as you are saying, like there are a lot of things that need addressing. So it's important to identify which ones are the most concerning, or where are the issues more acute, and therefore where should the action be prioritized. So yeah, those are some initial reactions to your questions that I'm sure Joe or Vishwanath will have more informed views on this. Thank you.
So over to Joe.
I think in India, there is a lot of hesitation at the civil society level, at the government level, and all public forms to call a spade a spade. We call a spade a pickaxe, a crowbar, and now and then we call it even an earth mover. But very seldom we call a spade a spade. I am not sure, because it is from secondary information that I am stating the following. I heard the organization RISE had done a study on the implementation of Swachh Bharat mission in UP or in their area. When they started to publish the findings, they were told not to do it by the government, because it's a Prime Minister's program. And I congratulate the Prime Minister that no other Prime Minister had highlighted sanitation as a crucial need, and who wanted to achieve that. But unfortunately, we are now and then more loyal than the king. So they are not allowed to publish. So this is going to happen. Yes, we must have, as I said earlier, to admit that several hundred crores of rupees were washed down the drain or the soak pit. But unless we come to terms with that and how to admit, and then bring in the aspect of quality of the toilet, I don't think we will be catching the bull by the tail and may not go very far. So I think that, first of all, I mean, the civil society or the other organizations cannot help much. But the government will have to say, all right, there are still toilets which do not function, or toilets which have failed to in any way bring about sanitation, and we will have to look at it and find a mechanism and a methodology by which these things have to be reworked. So re-engineering of the implementation is needed. Re-engineering, I mean the software and the hardware, as Andre said. Unless this is done, we are not going to achieve sanitation. And another thing is, I believe that in a village of 100 families, covering even 80% of the families with toilets, and even given that they all use that toilet, but 20 families still defecate in the open, we are not going to implement sanitation in a way so that it has got an impact on health. Sanitation is ultimately a restatement of a healthy life. So for that, we have to think of how to convince every family in a village to go for sanitation and safe sanitation. So this is what my small little thinking on this.
Yeah, I
Thank you,
just have
Vishwanath.
okay. I just have a little submission to Joe. That's if we take the three sets of data, say for the Jal Jeevan mission, the coverage of the Jal Jeevan mission, and then the open defecation free villages, and then there is a diarrheal incidence of the diarrheal diseases, say for the National Family Health Survey data. And if you move this from the diarrheal diseases to move to this Jal Jeevan mission and open defecation free from diarrheal diseases, so where it is occurring, rather than moving from the water and sanitation to a diarrhea, if you move from diarrheal diseases where it's occurring, and if you move over there for the Swachh Bharat mission as well as the this Jal Jeevan mission, I think the advocacy of this PM Prime Minister's achieving the Jal Jeevan mission 100% saturation and ODF won the 100% saturation of Swachh Bharat mission success. It may not get so much means for advocacy. It would be the another set of moving towards that. If we talk about the Swachh Bharat mission, open defecation free with the water quality, then it would be say that yes, this is a program that is very critical. But if you move from the health to the water, if somebody who is studying in the health, it could be the areas that we can say that yes, there is a problem in the water quality. If there is a water quality problem in any of the areas where the saturated by the toilet, and that is getting manifested with a health problem, definitely there is a way we can advocate to the government. Yes, there is a problem in the water quality, or you say that we haven't applied a different diverse technology or diverse community-based method to tackle these problems. We have only go to the one set of toilet, right? So that is my only a submission to this entire point. Yes, Vishwanath.
When we can, Satyajit, there has been another question from Debbie Nayak. In the interest of the time, Debbie ji will take it probably in another forum for vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you all the panelists that they have provided a very enriched insight to the subject matter. I would say Joe has highlighted the issue of sanitation, not a program, sanitation, not a statement. Rather, sanitation can link to the dignity of a person's life, and how sanitation we can link to providing, means he has set an example through his program, through his program strategy, that providing 3 taps to a family means it is providing a facility that a person, whenever thinks about sanitation, can think provisioning of a bathroom in a place, means sanitation in a dignified manner, how a person can maintain the sanitation program in a dignified manner, bathroom in a place, drinking water, and also drinking water to the family, and also quality aspect has been maintained. Again, you can think about the grey water. So it's a combination of all the components of WAS. It is, we cannot think alone isolation. Thank you, Joe, for highlighting this thing and highlighting your view how to influence the, so that we can take your advice always to lead our decision. Yes, you have made a very good study that you have said. The example has been how it will not be a one technology fit for the sanitation program if we are going with the toilet. And even it is not only the toilet, even grey water also is an issue. And we should have to go for a diversified technology. And retrofitting, if you are telling about retrofitting, the single list bit may create some problem, and even the program that is led by government, it should not be led by government, should be associated also as well, means by the public initiative, public intervention, and also financing to the program. Valid related point that you have made. When we are going ahead, we should have to put all these things in our mind while we are thinking about the sanitation program. Not only we can make a isolation, we should have to think integrating water related activity and sanitation and all. We have also our colleagues, women colleagues, I would say Urmila Didi and Sangeeta Didi from Gumla community, and again Sama Didi and Satyabhama Didi from Tarpa community, Khunti district. They all 4 of them are from Jharkhand district. They have been playing a major community leader. They have been playing a community leadership role in their own community, bringing changes to the community members there, and they have made some significant achievements, significant transformations in the society, providing their input to the WAS sector. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, providing your time, your valuable time to this discussion. We will continue this discussion ahead also in our program, bringing some of the very pertinent issues and discussing again on those issues with respect to sanitation and overall WAS sector. Thank you all. And also I'm forgetting, I would also thank Vishwanath for his moderation. He had moderated very well, very perfectly, and questioning to the guest panelists and making the total program a success. Thank you all, and thanks all the participants who have joined in and who have provided their time, and you have taken the discussion to a very good, very engaged moment. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. We can call